It started with an envelope, a plain, unassuming manila envelope that arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anything. No bills, no packages, just the usual junk mail, but there it was sitting on top of the pile like it had been waiting for me all along. My name and address were typed neatly on the front, but there was no return label. No stamp either. Someone must have dropped it off by hand. I stood at the kitchen counter, tearing open the flap with casual curiosity. Inside was a single photograph. At first glance, it looked ordinary enough. Rows of smiling faces, arms slung over shoulders, some kids making goofy gestures while others stared blankly into the camera. But then I froze. It took me a second to recognize myself, younger and thinner, standing near the back row with my hair tucked behind my ears. This was my class photo from middle school, the year before they demolished the building. The thing is, I don't remember ever taking this picture. Not really. The school didn't even exist anymore. It had been torn down almost 2 decades ago to make way for a shopping center. So how could anyone have sent me this? And why now? Let me rewind a little, because maybe you're wondering why this felt so unsettling. Growing up, I hated that school. Hated it. The fluorescent lights buzzed constantly overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. The lockers smelled like rust and old gym socks. Even the air seemed heavy, pressing down on us as we shuffled between classes. Worst of all were the rumors about what happened there before my time. Whispers of accidents, disappearances, things teachers never addressed directly, but hinted at during assemblies. By the time I graduated 8th grade, I wanted nothing more than to forget it entirely. And I did. For years, I didn't think about those hallways or the people who filled them. Life moved on. I went to high school, college, got a job, built a life far away from that place. Until today, when the past came creeping back without warning. When I flipped the photo over, my stomach dropped. On the back, written in shaky blue ink, were names. Every single person in the picture was labeled, including me. Some of the handwriting looked rushed, smudged, almost illegible. Others were precise, deliberate. My own name was scrawled near the bottom corner, Ellie Harper. Seeing it there made my skin crawl. Who would bother labeling every face? And why go through the trouble of finding me after all these years? I tried rationalizing it. Maybe it was some kind of reunion committee trying to reconnect alumni. Except reunions usually come with invitations, not cryptic photos delivered anonymously. Plus, if someone wanted to find me, wouldn't they use social media instead of dropping a package at my door? That night, I couldn't sleep. The photo sat on my bedside table, propped against the lamp so I could see it clearly. Something about it gnawed at me, like a splinter buried deep under my skin. The longer I stared, the more details jumped out. The faint shadow in the background where the photographer should have been, the slight blur around the edges as though the image hadn't fully developed. None of it added up. By morning, I decided to reach out to a few people from my old class. Facebook made it easy enough to track them down, though most hadn't updated their profiles in years. I sent messages to 5 classmates, attaching the photo and asking if they remembered it being taken. Only one replied, Sarah Bennett. She lived 3 towns over now, married with 2 kids. Her response was brief, almost dismissive. I don't know what that is. Never seen it before. But her tone changed when I called her later that evening. Over the phone, she sounded nervous, hesitant. Look, she said finally, there's something weird going on here. I got the same photo yesterday. What do you mean? I asked, gripping the receiver tighter. Exactly what I said. Same envelope, same picture. Only mine has different names on the back. The line went silent for a moment, and I could hear Sarah breathing on the other end, her breath shallow and uneven. My mind raced, trying to piece together what she just told me. Different names? What did that even mean? I don't understand, I said finally, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. How can the names be different? She hesitated again before answering. It's hard to explain over the phone, but they're not our names. At least, not all of them. Some of the people in the photo, they weren't in our class. Her words sent a chill running down my spine. I glanced at the photograph still sitting on my kitchen table, its edges curling slightly where I'd handled it too much. The faces stared back at me, frozen in time, their smiles oblivious to whatever dark secret this image held. I tried to count how many people were in the frame, but the rows blurred together, making it impossible to focus. Did you ask anyone else about it? I asked Sarah. No, she replied quickly, almost defensively. I didn't want to freak anyone out. Besides, I wasn't sure if I should trust, well, whoever sent it. We hung up shortly after that, both of us untapped and uneasy. But her confession left me more rattled than ever. If someone had gone to the trouble of sending these photos to multiple people, what was their motive? And why would they alter the names on the back? That night, I couldn't bring myself to put the photo away. Instead, I spread it out under the light of my desk lamp, examining every inch of it with obsessive precision. At first glance, it seemed normal enough, a typical school portrait captured during an assembly or some kind of event. But the longer I looked, the more inconsistencies began to surface. For one thing, the background behind us was wrong. Our school gymnasium had tall windows along one wall, letting in natural light during the day. In the photo, though, the backdrop was completely solid, a flat expanse of beige tile that extended endlessly, as if the photographer had cropped out everything beyond the group. Stranger still was the lighting, harsh and artificial, casting deep shadows across our faces that shouldn't have been possible given the setup. Then there were the expressions, or lack thereof. Most of us looked happy, carefree, exactly as you'd expect kids to look in a class photo. But a few stood out. One boy near the front row, his head tilted awkwardly to the side, wore an expression of pure terror. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open, like he'd been caught mid-scream. Another girl toward the edge of the frame appeared distorted. Her features stretched unnaturally, as though the camera lens had warped her face. And then there was the figure in the very back, barely visible, almost hidden by the crowd, was someone who definitely wasn't part of our class. A man, standing partially obscured by the last row of students. He wore a dark suit and tie, his face obscured by shadow, except for two pale dots where his eyes should have been. I squinted, leaning closer to the photo, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make out any more details. It was as if he existed just outside the boundaries of reality, refusing to fully materialize. By Thursday morning, I convinced myself I was losing it. Sleep deprivation will do that to you. Every creak of the house sounded sinister. Every flicker of the hallway light felt deliberate. Even mundane tasks, brushing my teeth, brewing coffee, became exercises in paranoia. I kept expecting something to happen, though I couldn't say what. All I knew was that the photo had opened a door in my mind, one I couldn't close no matter how hard I tried. Around noon, another envelope arrived. This time, I didn't wait until I was inside to open it. Standing on my porch, heart pounding, I tore through the seal and pulled out the contents. Another photo, nearly identical to the first, but not quite. The composition was the same, the angle unchanged, yet subtle differences emerged upon closer inspection. People who had been smiling in the original now looked sullen, their expressions grim. Others were missing entirely, replaced by empty spaces in the lineup. But the real shock came when I flipped it over. Written across the back in jagged handwriting were two words: "You're next." Panic surged through me, hot and suffocating. My hand shook so violently, I nearly dropped the photo. Who was doing this? Was it a prank? A threat? I called Sarah immediately, but her number went straight to voicemail. Desperate, I scrolled through my contacts, searching for anyone else from my old class who might still be reachable. One name stood out: Mark Reynolds. We hadn't spoken since graduation, but he'd always been the kind of guy who remembered everyone's birthday and stayed connected to old friends. If anyone could shed light on this nightmare, it was him. When Mark answered, his voice was clipped, distracted. "Hey, Ellie, what's up? I need your help." I blurted out, cutting straight to the point. "Have you received anything strange in the mail recently? Like a photo?" There was a long pause on the other end. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, growing colder. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because I got one," I said, my voice cracking. "And Sarah did too. She said hers had different names on the back. Do you know anything about it?" Mark sighed heavily, and for a moment, I thought he was going to hang up. Then he muttered something under his breath, too low for me to catch, and said, "Listen, Ellie, I think you should stop digging into this. Whatever's happening, you don't want to know." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Mark, tell me what's going on." But he was already gone, the line dead before I could press further. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, the photos spread out before me like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Each new detail only raised more questions, each revelation pulling me deeper into a labyrinth I feared I'd never escape. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, rattling the glass with relentless force. Shadows danced across the walls, shifting and twisting in ways that made my stomach churn. As midnight approached, I heard a soft knock at the door.